people. Thank you for coming to this. I really appreciate it. Um, I'll stick around as long as you want after I do my short little thing here, and you can ask me anything you want. I'll make myself available as long as you want to hang around. I guess the first thing that I would want to do here is kind of just give you a recap of what happened last year, which was really my first official year of guiding. So, and I was talking to this with Terry and Bart a minute ago, which is that the goal for me as a guide is not to turn this into some kind of a full time endeavor. I really want to kind of make it more of a selective thing and target people who understand what it is what we do, people who are willing to sit in a canoe for a day. Because at this point, I'm still using a canoe. There was some thought that this year I might have a different watercraft, and I was looking at the various kind of inflatable pontoons with the deck. And I was close to actually pulling the trigger on one, and then I realized that for a bunch of different reasons, I would have to get another vehicle, I have to get a trailer, a bunch of stuff that it wasn't in the works. So, right off the bat here, I will tell you that I'm still guiding out of a canoe, and and you know that's at least for this point in time for another season. That's what I'm probably going to have to do. So, um, I think I had a total of 8 or 9 clients last year, all but two booked multiple days. Moved up here last June, so I did not get to do any guiding in the month of May. And this year, I will probably, I guess I will make uh, some time available in May. And as you know, in the Northwoods, May can be a funky month. It can be really nice or it can be really cold. Um, so be aware of that. But certainly if anybody wanted to go out in May, I would say okay, let's do that. Um, I learned some things last year about the water that I fish, the primary stretch of river that I fish on the Wisconsin River. And Bart has floated this, and and Ken Santafort was with me last year and floated this section of the river. I learned a lot this year on that section of river, not so much by floating it, which I've done a fair amount of times in my life, but by doing some wade fishing. And it was actually the fall of 2020. I did some kind of mapping and bushwhacking and GPSing, and I found a place in which you could park a car and walk for about 20 minutes and get down to a kind of a primo stretch of the river. It did require some bushwhacking, and it was probably something that most people would want to do, but I did it a couple times early last season and then discovered that there's an alternate way to do this, which is much easier. So there's a place where you can, it's one of the access points where you can park a car and then walk about, I don't know, probably a 10 to 15-minute walk, which gets you on some really prime water. And this was a section of the river that, if you're floating the stretch of the river, this is kind of the end point. And this section of river is interesting because you have 5 miles of really super rocky, riffly, beautiful water. And then you get to the last rapids on the river, and it's like the glacier just stopped. And it goes from one kind of environment to one where it's now completely flat for the next 5 miles. And there's an access point there, and that's where you can walk in and get to this kind of last, let's say a quarter mile of river. And when you're floating this, if you've been out in the river for, you know, 6 or 7 hours, a lot of times you get to the end of the day and you're kind of getting tired and your energy level isn't so great and you're thinking about ending the day. And a lot of that last kind of part of that river is something that you'd fish through it, but it wouldn't be something that I would spend a lot of time on. This year, because I could get to that part of the river and really thoroughly wade it, I discovered how great it is, and that's something that would be an option if somebody didn't want to spend a full day of fishing and they wanted to spend 4 hours or something. You could do a walk-in wade excursion there, and it's some really lovely water. And you'll see some pictures of fish that I and some clients a little video thing. Um, had unusually low water. Not wouldn't say unusually low, but definitely some lower water than what you would normally have in both July and August. The normal flow there at that time of the year probably between 1,000 and CFS, and in late July and early August, there were a couple days where it was as low as 400. So less than half the flow, but it did not seem in any way to affect the fishing. And what made it interesting for me is I was able to kind of wade across the entire river, which at that point is probably 150 or 200 feet wide. And there were areas where I was able to kind of cross the entire river to wade fish on either side. And I do think that um, one side of the river kind of is a little bit more optimum to fish from than the other. But anyway, um, baits. The Whopper Plopper was the supreme bait again last year. However, one of the things I like to throw a lot is plastic jerk baits, and I discovered these here last year. I'm gonna get one out of a package. They're made by Guggen, okay, and they're a plastic jerk bait, shad, uh, whatever you want to call it. This is what they look like out of the package. I rigged these, with a 5 hook, ot 5, and no weight. And these were great, man. I don't know if it's just a different profile, if it's the way they look. I don't know. You know how it is with plastic baits. There's a million of them. You find one that works for you, and you go, okay, this is cool, and then you use that one. I do occasionally use other kind of jerk baits, but this one was particularly great last year. Um, what else here? Let me tell you about a couple of trips I had last year. One is Ken Santafort? He isn't on here, is he? I don't think. And I think I might have posted this on the forums last year, but I had Ken was the first guy that called me back in like maybe February or March of last year, and he was the first guy to book a trip with me last year. And so he did a trip in mid-July, and we had this insane day of fishing, which is one of those things that uh, I don't know. How often do you have a day like this? Once every 5 years, once every 10 years, once every 20 years? I don't know. All I know is that he ended up catching, I don't remember the number now. I want to say it was like 127 small walleye. It was crazy. Um, I've never had a day like that ever fishing. He was using a Ned rig and Senkos, and a lot of his fish tended to be probably 14 inches in that range. But he did catch a number of bigger fish. But it was just a crazy day. It was one of those days where it seemed like on every other cast he was hooking up with fish. Um, so that was a pretty kind of a crazy day. The season for the most part was really good. It got difficult for me in late September. I had a couple of clients in September, and it was just the fishing was just really really slow. And I think what happened is it must have gotten, the temperature must have dropped off, and what are you going to do, right? It's that time of the year. Um, as a lot of you guys know, sometimes September can be great, and the beginning of the month was actually pretty good, but towards the end of the year it was a little tough. So that's kind of how the year went. As you guys know, as you can see, this lovely collection of instruments behind me here. I'm still playing a lot of gigs. In fact, I hooked up with a country band up here, and I'm playing now a ton. And so that, for those of you who might be interested in scheduling a trip, weekends are tough. I'm not sure if I'll have any weekend days available at all. But the old saying about fishing during the week is always going to be less people on the water, even though you don't see many people on these rivers in general. And on weekends, what you see mostly is recreational kayakers and canoeists. Not a lot of fishermen, although clearly people fish it. So that's another thing to think about if you wanted to do a trip. The weekdays are going to be the. And I think what I'll do is after the meeting here, I'll go through my calendar and I'll post something on the ISA forums that have all the dates that are currently open for trips. Um, so at this point, I think I can show you some photos, a couple little slide shows here, and talk about what's going on. The first thing I wanted to do is um,
Gordon,
just put
excuse
it.
me.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not sure if you're the host or not, but you might want to check, see if there's anybody else wanting to come in. I just thought
I'm
about
not
it.
the host. Yeah, no, Bart's been the host since we
Okay.
started.
Sorry for the
That's
interruption.
okay. No problem.
Yeah.
Um, but you're gonna have to make me the host to show these things here. I made a couple of like they're like I think one is 2 minutes and the other ones are about a minute, and they're three separate things here. The first thing I wanted to show people, in case you've never seen or I posted pictures occasionally on the ISA forums of this, but I just did a little slideshow with some video of just what the river looks like, so you can get an idea what it looks like. And then I've got, of course, the obligatory fish photos. But let me do the first one that just gives you a sense of what the river actually the environment looks like. Did you make me the host there, my good man, Bart?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. So first up here will be this. I'm gonna go back to the beginning and play this guy. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Um, it's pretty nice, as you can see. But those of you that have been on the Menominee rivers like that, you can see how there's some similarities with the St. Croix. It's kind of similar, I would say, to those rivers. Um, so next, I am going to find. Hold on a second. This next little video thing I want to do here. So hold on. Sorry, technology is sometimes gets the best of me here. The share screen thing is weird here because sometimes it doesn't show what I'm trying to get you to see here.
Trying to collect as many bases as he caught bass.
Yes, exactly. All right, now this is annoying me. Where the heck is this going to come up here? Let's see. Hold on. There we go. Let's try that. Okay, now I look like a big dummy here because I'm not finding what I'm looking for here when I do this share screen function. I'm just trying to get my desktop here, and when I do the share screen, it is not. Don't know why. Let me try something here.
There we go.
Yeah, I've got this, but this is not what I'm looking for. Let's see. Come on. All right, let me try this. You guys see it? Huh, your screen sharing is paused. Why? I don't know why. Okay, I'm not sure. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing this if this is not going to work. Um, hmm. Well, I don't know. I don't know why I can't get this. It's not my desktop is not coming up on the screen share. I mean, part of it is, but um, hmm. Wow.
Was it a video similar to the other one, Gordon?
Yeah, but the other one had uploaded that to YouTube, and so what you were watching from was YouTube. What I'm trying to show you now is on my desktop, and I can get to my desktop, but when I hit screen share, um, it's giving me everything but what I'm
Hey,
looking for.
could you dump it into a folder and maybe it could find it that way instead of your desktop? You know what I mean?
Say that again, Kevin. You cut out for 1 second.
Sorry, could you dump whatever you're trying to show us into a folder somewhere instead of your desktop? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Let me do that. That's a good idea. Let me see what happens right here. I'll do this.
Hey, and Terry, I saw your apology that you put out there on the tube. I'm no woman, but that did not sound like a sincere apology to me.
That's what I've been hearing. Don't worry, apology 2 is coming out.
Hey, can you see? Can you guys see this?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so
can
there's
see it.
Ken. There's Ken.
Yeah, we can see everything on the side. I'm surprised you can't just
Excellent.
click on your desktop.
Yeah, it's weird. So anyway, this is Ken. These are some of the bigger fish he got. Here's Alan Sherman.
I just see a playlist of music.
Yeah, we're seeing your playlist. We're not seeing anything happening.
Weird,
But we can see your
because
computer.
on my screen.
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Weird because it's Yeah. See, so here's all right. So here's obviously the folder, and when I click on the particular little comes up here, but you guys aren't seeing it.
No, we can see the folders.
Yeah. Okay. So why won't this allow me to share these particular things here? I don't know. I don't get it.
You're seeing boulders?
Can you click on the video file?
Yeah, I did. Hold on.
Or get to that screen that has the video file on it?
Let me get these back on my desktop and see. Try this again.
But I had to say the video that you showed was pretty awesome. I mean, I think it really depicted the waters very well, you know?
Yeah. Why can't I get to my
I really enjoyed that video. That was good.
I don't get it, man. Portion of screen. Let's see here. All right.
There's
There
your
we go.
desktop.
Let's try this. Anything?
Yes, there it
Hey,
is.
there you go.
Hey, all right. Again, let me try this again. This is Ken Santafort, the guy that had the amazing over 100 fish day. Then here's Alan. She took a couple different trips with me, different times in the summer. That's a different river right there. There There's my friend Gerard, Crazy Gerard with the biggest mustache in the world. There's his brother Tom. That's my friend Michael Georges, who's a sound man.
The top half of the photos are cut off. Those look good.
Guy's name was Ken. That's my cousin Frank, who I hadn't seen in about 30 years. Booked a trip with me. And this is my neighbor, actually. He wasn't technically a client.
Can you minimize that screen
Out in
at
that
all?
part of the river before. I'm sorry.
Can you minimize that screen at all, or because the pictures are real huge that we're seeing?
Let me try this now. Let's see. All right, here's some fish I caught wade fishing. How is the size here?
Kind of the same thing.
Yeah, they're half the pictures blocked out.
If you guys hit the full screen in the upper left, then you'll see the pictures, and it'll make the bar of everyone else on here go away. If that helps.
The hell is he talking
about? What's he talking about?
There's a full screen option.
I don't know.
Oh, you mean as the host?
It's in the upper right, excuse me, upper right, and then it makes the bar of all the people go away, and you can see all the pictures complete.
I don't see anything like that.
No, so it's up, instead of minimizing or closing out the window, there's a box and that'll make it a full screen, is what he's saying. Right, Paul?
Yes, you are correct. And then all I see is one little picture of you talking on the side, and I can see his full screen. So there's things we can do that Gordon doesn't necessarily have to do.
Should I try this again?
Sure.
One more time.
All right, here's the obligatory pictures that I took with my phone while I was wading. These are all fish I caught wade fishing last.
That's still pretty blown up.
Yep.
Yeah, man. I again, the technology is beyond my capabilities here. I'm not sure what I would have to do, but basically, you're gonna see a bunch of pictures of me holding fish, which is pretty boring after a while. So, but let's just say that there's some pretty nice fish here.
Well, we can see that.
They're giants.
Eggs.
That one. That might have been the biggest fish I caught all summer. That was late September. That's on a different river too. All right, done. Sorry that technologically enjoyable, but with my limited knowledge about it, and this is the first time I actually was able to use some technology to put together a slideshow like that. So, anyway, that's an idea of what happens out on the river and what it looks like. And at this point, fire away if you'd like to ask any questions. At once.
Some people might have to unmute their mics. Remember,
Yeah,
your mic might be
right.
muted.
A lot of microphones are muted here.
Hey, Gordon, this is Paul. I got a question for you. Now, I fished the Wisconsin River, I think, with you like three times over the course of time. And I know pretty much every time we went out, we had some kind of like muskie encounter. I know I think we caught two on three of the trips, and we've had close encounters. Do you run into a lot of muskie in that section, or did we just happen to have some odd encounters the times we went?
I wouldn't say I run into a lot of them. Ken Santafort had one grab a bass last year, but they're in there, and I think if you targeted them, you'd probably do pretty good. But I wouldn't say I have a lot of encounters with them. But I've had way. I mean, there's a fishable population of them, I'm sure. They, maybe it's if I'm throwing bass size baits, although obviously they will hit bass size baits occasionally, but um, I can't really answer the question as to how dense, what the density of the population is, but it seems to me like it must be pretty good.
Gordon,
I
this
mean,
is Steve Schmidt. Can
Hey,
I
Steve.
cut in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've fished up in that area. And I got a 59-inch muskie using a fly rod caught smallmouth up there. There are a lot of muskies, and they're hungry.
Yeah. I
What
mean,
is the river? Let's suppose you had a canoe on there and you wanted to go back upstream after you were done. Is there depth enough in the river that you can motor back up?
well, you say the word
I
motor back
understand that
up?
it depends on the flow and the flow through the water, but
Yeah, at certain flows, there's unless you had a jet motor, you don't want to put a prop in there. It's just way too rocky, and a lot of it, when it's lower, can be a foot deep, or there's sections of it that would be impassable with a heavier boat. So I suppose that during a high water, you could get back upstream, but certainly not in an average flow. I don't think you'd be able to do that. I don't see. I've seen. I'm trying to think. I've seen people will sometimes put in, and they'll with a little outboard, and they'll kind of motor a little ways upstream from one of the landings. But I don't see anybody kind of going long distances with a motor. I just don't think it's doable for most of the year. Ed, don't you have any questions, Ed?
No, not
I love
really.
your
I'm just
beard,
not
by the
following
way.
you guys.
I just had to make a comment about your well manicured beard. It's a lovely thing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It took me a bit to grow it.
Yes.
And no, it is not an ode to Jude. It is my own.
Ah, I see. Yeah, that's a pretty. I don't even know what to say about that.
Where is this stretch of river that we're talking about?
It's it would be southwest of Rhinelander. So from any place in northern Illinois, your drive is, it's 4.5 to 5.5 far out of the city you are. If you're north of the city, when I lived in Prospect Heights, I would make the trip sometimes in 5 hours, sometimes a little bit under 5 hours, depending on how many times I stopped. So that's the the distance. It's if you live near the border, 4 hours, I suppose.
Gordon, where do you live now?
I'm sorry.
Where do you live? What city or you?
I'm outside of Rhinelander too. So the stretch of river that I consider kind of the premier stretch of it is 5 minutes from where I live. And there's a couple different sections that we should talk about. Another thing I should bring up is this. So the Wisconsin River, I would consider these river are the primary ones that I would take somebody on if they're looking for, kind of the chance at a legitimate, 18, 20-inch fish. There's a good population there. There are some other rivers that I fish as well that also can produce really well. But of this particular stretch of the Wisconsin River, you can kind of cut it into two sections. And one section is 3.5 miles, and the other section is 5.5 miles. A longer stretch has 2 Class 2 rapids, maybe one that's Class 2.5, depending on the water level. And with the right craft or with a highly skilled person in a boat, you can negotiate these rapids, but out of kind of for me, out of the goal to be as safe as possible, because I've actually dumped in these rapids I've had, and that's no because that water is really it's moving. So there's a slight portage on the one section of the river that the first year that I portaged it, I did it on one side of the river, and it was kind of a not very great portage. It was doable, but I wouldn't want to do it frequently. But then last year, I discovered that there's a much easier way to portage through this one section of the rapids on the other side of the river, and the distance is maybe 75 feet. I mean, it's really kind of nothing. And I got out there last year with a saw and kind of tried to make it as easy as possible to get through this particular portage. No, I have not fed the dog. Okay. And because this rapids, it's interesting. It's not so bad except for one area kind of smack dab in the middle where there's like just no really good route. And when the water is low, you're talking about a couple of feet, you know, you got to hit it just right or you're going to bash into some rocks. So I've just chosen to do the short portage. It's really not difficult. But other than that, the rest of it is completely, you know, there's no problems getting through, and 75% of it is wadeable. Of course, again, it depends on the water level, but you know, you can get out and wade a whole bunch of sections of it. And again, when the water level is right, you know, that's to me. The other thing that I'm sure that a lot of you guys that do a lot of wade fishing is that even though I've done a fair amount of wade fishing in my life, it was always, you know, you get in the canoe, you find a good place to get out and wade, and you do that. I pretty rarely am going to find a part of the river to go in and wade on. But now that I've got this stretch that is doable that way, it's, you know, I waded that part of the river last year probably, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 times because it's so easily accessible. Or when I say easily accessible, let's put it this way. The section that you know, you could, if you wanted to say, hey, let's just go and wade this part of the river, it's about a 10-minute walk, and I would, if one would be a level road that was paved and 10 would be, you know, trying to climb up a mountain, the actual walk is probably about a 2, because there's some areas where you kind of you have to watch your footing a little bit, but it's nothing, you know, that isn't doable. So that's, you know, as far as that part of the river, that's kind of the upper part of it. The shorter float is very easy float. It only has some kind of riffly water in a couple places, but the fishing there is good. But the fishing in the other section is probably, you know, a couple degrees, however you want to rate it, better. I mean, if you really, and plus the first section, you know, you can do the float in 4 hours. You can do it. You can take your time and, you know, and get out and wade more. But there's also some deeper water in that section too. But the second stretch be, again, if you want to do a whole day worth of fishing and what I consider to be some really incredibly cool water, that would be where you would want to fish. That would be the float you would want to. Or, and again, the other option too is there are a couple other sections of the Wisconsin River that are north of here that I floated a bunch too. In fact, Bart was with me on the section, rapid section, and that's a pretty nice section of the river too. And I've caught some really nice fish in that section of the river too. And then there's of course a couple other smaller rivers that last year Alan Sherman did a float with me, and we did not catch a ton of fish, but man, all of them that we caught were really really big. And he also had a close encounter with a muskie on that river too. So those are, you know, those are all options. And the other sections of the river are, you know, it's probably a 35-minute ride from where I am. So depending on where you were staying, it's not, you know, they're not like long hikes or long drives or anything like that. Silence.
Hmm.
Somebody speak, or I'm gonna hit myself. I'm gonna start playing. I'm gonna pull one of these guitars out and start playing something.
What time in the morning do you usually start fishing?
I'll start fishing as early as people want to fish. Um, I cannot objectively say that getting out in the water at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning or whatever, how early someone would want to get out, is going to be better. I can't answer that because I don't typically get out that early. I would tell you that there seems to be, and of course it's not the same every single day, but there seems to be a kind of late afternoon thing of the river that somewhere around 4 or 5 o'clock I feel like stuff starts to turn on. And of course every day, depending on the weather or the flow, it could be a little bit different. I told myself last year that I would try to get out a couple times really early to see, and of course I didn't. But if a client wanted to get out that early, I'd say, okay, fine. I'll go out anytime anybody wants to. If someone really wanted to try it early in the morning, I'd say, sure, I'll do that. I don't know how many people.
Hey, Gordon, this is Paul.
Yeah.
Is there a certain time of year where the average size seems to be better? I know when you took Ken, it seemed to be the numbers time of year. Have you noticed like a pattern where, the big ones really show up like in this window?
Well, what I would say, just based on the days that I fished last year, most of the larger fish that I caught were in from the second or third week of July until the first or second week of August. But again, that may have been just because I didn't fish as many days in June. Remember, I got up here, this is when we moved, and the first couple weeks that we were up here, I was kind of occupied with getting settled in and all that crap, and I didn't do a ton of fishing in June. But mid June to the for the rest of the summer is always times so it's been good. Whenever those fish are done spawning, which is of course sometime first or second week of June sometimes. Anytime after that seems like it's all good. But last year for me it was July.
Hey Gordon,
Hey Ben, how you doing?
Not bad, man. It's getting kind of cold out on the ground.
Yeah.
But this is my space and I'll take it.
Sure.
What's your split on like the fly rod to gear fishing these years? Do you both?
The only client that fly fished with me last year was Alan Sherman.
Okay.
And he did catch some fish fly fishing, but he's been having some problems with his wrist. So he's like, man, I just can't fly fish like I used to, And so he ended up doing more spin fishing than fly fishing. But certainly if people wanted to fly fish, I would say that, I don't know how many people have done any fly fishing out of a canoe. It would probably be the kind of thing where you want to get out and wade,
Yeah. That's where that raft really opens up and makes a big difference in that stability.
I totally agree. And in a perfect world, that will be my next acquisition for this.
Absolutely.
Because I realize that a lot of people don't want to sit all day long, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
And I did there was a guy that was selling, there's a guy up here in Boulder Junction. So you guys know about the Flycraft and the Stealthcraft, right? Those are the kind of boats we're talking about. There's a guy up in Boulder Junction, a guy who's a guide, and he's got a fly shop. His name is Bill Shear, and he makes the same kind of boat. And he makes a very nice version of that kind of a boat. And there was somebody that had one for sale here, like 10 minutes from me. And I went and looked at it, and I'm like, man, the price was pretty good. But I just, again, I've got this goofy vehicle. I've got this Volkswagen that you can't tow a trailer with.
That's the big.
Okay.
You want a trailer, or it doesn't make sense.
What's that?
That's the big thing, is you want a trailer or it doesn't make sense.
Right, exactly. Or, I suppose if you had a big enough bed, I don't even know if they make a pickup truck with a big enough bed for it. That would be an option too. But I have to buy another vehicle. a trailer before I could have something like that. And again, at some point I'm going to have to do that, but
Yeah.
it just didn't happen this year.
Okay, how about this? You had a client cancel on you, so now you're gonna go out fishing by yourself. You're gonna go wading, you're gonna do a float, or you're gonna call a buddy and ask him to come along, and you get one lure.
That's an interesting question. I got to tell you, man, I hate to be like the guy that that talks about the Whopper Plopper, but it was so ridiculous last year. There was one day where I got out and I was waiting, and again, the other thing here is my kind of slight obsession with the solunar periods, and I got out at a minor period, late afternoon, early evening, 1 hour solunar period, and I waded up to the spot, and on my first cast I caught a fish. On the second cast I missed a fish, and on the third cast I caught a fish, all on the Whopper Plopper. And probably, I shouldn't say all the biggest fish I caught were on the Whopper Plopper, because that wouldn't be the case, because I did catch a fair amount on the jerkbait. But I don't know, Terry, man. That might be my answer. And speaking of Whopper Ploppers, the one that I found that eventually I started throwing the most was they make a really tiny one, and they make one that's slightly bigger, and I don't remember the model number, but and it's kind of really chubby little fat round Whopper Plopper, but it's not the tiniest one that they make. It's the next one up from that. And that was the one that I ended up throwing the most. I mean, I've used the larger size ones too, and obviously they'll catch fish. But for some reason, that little yellow. In fact, I was throwing yellow, which is a color that I think I bought one because I was looking to just add a few more, and that's what they had wherever I went and bought them. Oh, look, there's a yellow one. Well, what the hell? I'll buy the yellow one. And for some reason, that was the one that I was really that I just was the one that was my go-to.
I think they call that one a size 70.
I think you're right. I think that's the one. I think that's the size. Again, you can argue color. I don't know. I'm not going to say that the color was what made the difference, but we all know how we feel once something works for you, right? Once it's working for you, you get that. Okay, this is the one I want to use, and then you kind of default to that.
Yeah, that's the way I've always felt. I just, I think I've always thrown the bigger Whopper Plopper, and I mean, I'm not like you and Paul, I don't get paid every time I say Whopper Plopper, but
no, I'm not. I wish I had a sponsorship with what is it, Dahlberg? Is that who makes those? Right? Is he the designer of the Whopper Plopper, Larry Dahlberg?
Yeah, River to Seas is
River to Sea, yeah.
If you got to give it to Larry Dahlberg, that guy is a genius.
Yeah, he's man, and he's been around for a million years. The amusing story about Larry Dahlberg is that, when he was first starting out, he would fish the St. Croix, okay, and he would fish it with someone was talking about a motoring, right? He would fish it with a motorboat because whatever sections he was on, he was able to run it with a motorboat, okay, and the St. Croix, which, by the way, there's a section of the St. Croix that's stunning, and that I fished it, I think 3 times, and I definitely want to go back because it's really beautiful, and the fishing is pretty good there too. But the St. Croix gets tons of recreational canoeists and kayakers, right? It gets tons, and he would be on the river motoring upstream, and he'd encounter groups of kayaks and canoers, and they would all kind of give him the stank eye because he was in a motorboat, right? And they were all in their canoes, and he got tired of people kind of looking at him, or I'm sure maybe the occasional finger that was being given to him. So he took some black tape and he put River Patrol on the side of his boat, And then when he would go upstream, people thought he was, an official and he was doing good things, and they stopped giving him the bad looks then.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and they had to put their stuff away in the coolers and park.
Right. Right.
Smart. It's smart. No, that guy's got a million anecdotes, and he always cracks me up.
Yeah, he's been everywhere. So
Awesome. Have you ever have you done much on the lower Wisconsin?
I fished the lower Wisconsin once, and I was somewhere between, I don't know, probably
Muskota.
20 miles upstream from Prairie du Chien.
Okay.
So really kind of towards the very lowest part of it, right? Or the end of it, right? The last. And I found it to be really, really huge and wide and with really strong current and not at all like what I like to fish in,
Hard, yeah.
And there's a you could do it without any problem. I think that's probably totally no issues there with that. But it was just it was beautiful, but it doesn't have the kind of structure that it doesn't have all that bouldery goodness that the upper river has. Because the upper part is just I know that the little video slideshows that I did earlier, they kind of gave you a quick overview, but there are some enormous boulders in that stretch of the river, like bigger boulders than I think I've seen in any other river that I've been on, and it's just the geology of it's amazing. Not that giant boulders make the fishing any better, but it's just really interesting geologically that it's got these huge, and that in the lower river is just not like that. But I know that there's some excellent fishing in the lower part of the river, but I was only on it once, and that was a long time ago, probably over 20 years ago. But
So
pretty
it's
much
not-
from, I'm sorry, Terry?
I was gonna say, it sounds to me like I should fish giant boulders then, because you're telling me to stay away from them.
I like giant boulders.
It means
There's
there's
a joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to make that joke. So, so as far as the upper Wisconsin River is concerned, for me, I fished all of it from the upper part of, like, up by Saint Germain all the way down to Wausau, and sections of up until that point. Till you get to kind of Wausau, there are areas of the river where you have this really great rocky structure. Some of you guys, I know that some of you, I think, have fished the area of north of Merrill. Has anybody been in that section of the river? Because that's got some really super great structure. Yes, that's the first place we fished, Paul. But you've been on it since then. But the first trip that we went on, that was the first place we fished.
Yeah, we did that short section north of Merrill.
Yeah.
Went through a pretty good rapids, if I remember too.
Yeah, there's two rapids there: Bill Cross Rapids and what is the other one called? I can't think of the name of it.
Maybe the
Posey Rapids is
called?
the other one. Posey Rapids. Posey and Bill Cross. Yeah, the second one, which I believe is Bill Cross, is not too bad, but it's definitely it definitely needs to be respected.
I actually put in Lake Alexander and motored up to Bill Cross Rapids. You can get there that way. Didn't really do that good. It's beautiful though. It's got that classic rocky boulder structure you're looking for.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, you can float about there's about 4 miles there, 3.5, 4 miles of river. You can float from below. What is it? Which is it? Grandmother or grandfather there? What is the second dam?
I think the grandfather is the second one. The grandmother is a little bit north.
Right.
That grandmother dam really only has a good free-flowing section for about a mile or two, and then it becomes kind of like a reservoir dynamic,
Below grandmother, yeah, grandmother is between below grandmother. You essentially have a flowage there.
Yeah, it's only like a good Boulder River section for like a mile or two below
Yeah.
the dam. Yeah.
Fresh below Grandfather is bouldery all the way till you get to Bill Cross Rapids,
Pretty
and
much.
then
Yeah.
it flattens out. That's a good section too, but I haven't been on it in a number of years. But that was one that I floated a lot years ago.
You know, I like that section of Wisconsin that's below the rainbow flowage. That's pretty too.
That's a great part of the river too. I floated that one a bunch. Um, and what's interesting about that stretch of the river is that when you get to the again, and it's interesting because it has a similar geological thing as the part of the river that we've been talking about the most part, where it hits the rapids and then it just like flattens out. It's like the glaciers just kind of missed part of the river, and you get to that section below Rainbow Rapids, right? That's the rapids there, and then for the next mile and a half, it's flat water with houses pretty much on either side, and it doesn't look like great water, but I've caught some really, really good fish in that kind of flat area of the river, surprisingly. And that would be, again, depending on what anybody would want to do. If a client wanted to fish two different sections, and that would be another one that probably after the section up by me here that would be the next stretch of river that I would take people on. That's where we fished that one day 2 years ago, where we had an epically slow day of fishing
Until the end, right?
till the end, until you
Yeah.
got your 20 at the very end there. Yeah.
That section can fish funky. I mean, the upper section looks so beautiful with the boulder gardens, and then you get to the section that's flat and kind of sandy and weedy by people's houses, and then that's where you get the big ones. I had the same
Sometimes,
kind of
yeah,
experience.
for sure. I've had that experience, but I've also had really good days in the upper part of that too, in the rockier part of it. I've had some really good fishing up there too. But yeah, you know, that just goes to show you can't always look at the water and say, oh, that's not good water, because sometimes you're wrong.
I'll tell you, to me, Gordon, the waiting opportunity sounded really intriguing. You know, I think the only time I fished with you probably 5 times. I know each time has really been out of a boat. That one time, or the last time, we did get to wait a little bit. I know, but I know you know you can really hike into some good spots. I know. You know that's an advantage to waiting, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you know it's funny. I forgot to mention that again, and it depends on how much anybody would want to walk. But so if you know, with a combination of like Google Earth and kind of looking at maps and kind of using a GPS, there are all these roads that snake back into the river. Well, they might start out as they might have been logging roads at one time, and then at some point they kind of gradually kind of like paths. But I have found a couple other places that you could get into the river. Bart, you know, because you floated the section of the river that we're talking about, where the island that you encounter, right? It's you hit the first rapids, and you come to that big island, right? And there's a place where you can walk into, and you can get into the river below that island. The problem with that is getting across the river to. Last year, I went in there and I started wading, and the river was probably at about a normal flow, and I got, oh man, about a third of the way across the river, and all of a sudden you realize this water is really pushy, and
Too deep.
I don't know if I can make it across, man. I stood there like going, Jesus Christ, I don't know if I can get across. What's that?
There's a 4-letter for that.
Yeah, there is, and it was really kind of, for a few moments, it was kind of like, oh, this isn't really good here, and I just kind of inched my way till I got into the shallower water. But for a moment there, it was not a good thing. There's probably a way to get, yeah, there's probably a way to find a way to get across the river by going a little bit farther downstream and then crossing it, which, you know, I will eventually find where those spots are, but because below this island,
Phenomenal.
that can be just an incredible spot sometimes. No, don't say anything. What are you saying there, Bart?
I just said that area below the island is phenomenal. That's like
It can be unbelievable. It can be crazy. You just get down the downstream side of that island and you just sit there and you just fish that for 45 minutes. It's crazy. But they have the option again. Sometimes it's about time, right? How much time do you want to spend? How much time do you have? Do you want to just fish for 4 hours? And if you were going to do that, those would be options. Again, it requires more effort, and some people might say, "Yeah, I really don't want to hike for 20 minutes into the woods." I can totally understand that, but some of those areas, again, you can get to them. It's just the amount of work that you want to do or are willing to do. I mean, I've taken a bike back in there. I've want to get down there, man. I want to get down there as fast as I can. So, although one time I tried to bike it, there was so much. There had been some heavy rain, and so there was all these just giant puddles everywhere, and ended up walking my bike, but I've ridden my bike to get down there. So options, there are options, but again, the best thing to do is to do the 5-mile float. That's the primo water. That's the most beautiful water, and I think the best fishing too. Again, the only caveat is that you're going to do a little portage. You're going to do one portage, and I've seen guys. I know that I'll use the word competition, but that's not really fair because what Abe Downs does is he's in a different kind of level of gear than I have, but those guys will go through those. In fact, Bart, does he go through the rapids on the left side of the island when you guys have floated that? Does he take the drift boat?
Yeah, I've only seen him go on the right. I've never seen him go on the left.
He goes through the right where the bend is. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I've seen guys go through I've seen people go through on the left where there's a drop of about 3 feet there.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
That's interesting. That must be interesting to negotiate because there's a really there's a rock in a totally wrong place when you go on the right side there that you can easily get pinned to if you're not moving that boat at a good you have control over it.
He seems to do it with ease. I mean.
Yeah, well, good for him.
But I couldn't do it.
Those drift boats.
Yeah, I would definitely portage.
Yeah.
Through the island, probably.
And the other thing is, it's funny because what I did with my clients last year was, this goofy stuff. We portage around the worst part of the rapids, and then downstream is this island, right? It's a really, really nice island. People camp out on this island, and then on the right, you have there's a drop on the left side. There's kind of a curve, and then there's like a boulder garden that goes down. There is a bit of a drop there, and in order for me to avoid dealing with the poorly placed rock, there's a tiny little gap between the main island and there's also a little tiny little island there, and I'm able to squeeze my canoe through to avoid the worst of that. And I just tell them, I drop my clients off on the island and say, just walk to the other side. It's 200 feet to the other side of the island or whatever, and I'll meet you on the other side. And then I squeeze my canoe through this little gap between the two islands there. That's probably more than you want to know, but that's.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you for the answer.
For sure.
And thank you for your presentation too, Gordon.
Absolutely. I'm glad to do it. I'm glad everyone showed up.
Good to hear you and talk to you.
Yeah, man. I haven't seen you, Ed, now for a number of years. So
no, it's been a while. Yeah.
Reason for you to get up there to see him, Ed. So,
did you do Dork County or Raleigh's Bay last year?
No, I didn't. Partly because of the water levels and partly because of my home issues here. I'm caretaker for my wife now, and It's tough getting
got
out.
it. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Water level was really high, super high again last year? Or
Yeah, it was, it was unwaitable. You
Yeah.
would have had, everybody would have had to have a boat.
Oh, wow. Huh. Yeah,
So
that's
Gordon, you said
one of
that
the.
you, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, that's still a trip that I've never. I've been there. I've attempted to do it, and I've been thwarted by weather both times I tried to do that. But one day, maybe when the water levels come down. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Bart.
it's
What were we
great.
gonna say?
It's great when you can wait it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Bart, you were about to say something.
Yeah, Gordon, I was just going to say, you mentioned earlier that you would post your available dates.
I will do that. Yes.
And I know that I need to secure a date with you, so that'd be great to see what those are, and then we can, get that ironed out.
Right. Well, you had a couple dates that you had in mind, and I don't know if those are still in play or whatever.
Right. So I'll definitely follow up with you on that, okay?
Okay.
We'll get that squared away.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll post them. I'll probably do it this evening. I'll go through my calendar from, I don't know. I guess I'll do May through September, and just post all the available dates.
Sounds good.
The wild cards for me are again, as I said last year, I would calling myself a guide is, I mean, yes, I'm guiding, right? The level of experience you need to truly be, a guide is one that I'm still, still not there yet, because of stuff like early season fishing is one thing, and also cracking the code on the fall, because I've had great fall fishing, but man, a couple days this September were just brutal out there with clients. It's like I just didn't know where the fish were. It was like, what is going on here? So that's another thing, to have to kind of those seasonal things that I feel like I need to have. If I got clients that want to come out in late September, I got to figure out what's going on. And it was a mystery to me last year. So.